Good evening, everyone. So, welcome back to our topic of direct tax. If you all remember, in the previous session, we discussed something about charging section, that is section 4. Then we went on to understand section 14, which asks us to compute the income headwise to divide our income headwise. Then we discussed one thing, that how to determine which income falls under which head. So for this, you all gave me the input that the first section of every head is the charging section, and correctly so. So by analyzing that charging section, you get to know what would be covered in a particular head. Then we discussed the broad structure of the heads, where I informed you all that originally there were 6 heads of income. Now there are 5. The second head, that is interest on securities, is now merged with the 5th head, that is income from other sources. And then we discussed the overall structure of a direct tax charging section versus the indirect tax charging section. After that, we went into the details of our head, that is income from house property, where we discussed first most important point as to what is the method of computation. There, I'd explained you that the method of computation is different for each head. For HP and capital gain, the method is mercantile with some exception. So it is on due basis that you compute HP income, the capital gain income. Both these heads are computed on due basis. For PGBP, that is the business head and other sources head, the law has given you the choice. So you can opt either for cash basis or you can opt for mercantile basis, depending upon the method which you are regularly adopting. That would be our method for the computation of these two heads income. Then we discussed the format. Now the format of HP is very particularly rigid. We cannot go beyond what is there in this format because it is very strict and very specific. So as you can see in the format, for the purpose of computing your HP income, the first thing that you need to determine is the gross annual value. From that, you deduct the municipal tax. Here the condition, this is the exception, where we consider something not on mercantile basis but on cash basis. So here your requirement is that the municipal tax should have been paid. So it is on cash basis. Second, it should be paid by the owner of the property and not by the tenant or any other person. Then only it is deductible. After deducting, the amount left is called as net annual value. And from that, you are allowed deductions. There are presently only 2 deductions from the HP head provided under section 24. First is clause A standard deduction, which is 30% of NAV, and the other is interest on borrowed capital. Now you have to remember the students that when you are talking about HP head in a given sum, you may not be given all the details relating to this computation format. For example, many times in comprehensive sum, where you are supposed to compute PGBP income also, you are supposed to find out your total tax liability, allowing deduction, computing under both these schemes, old scheme, new scheme. In such cases, many times the HP adjustment is hardly one line. They may simply say that the house is given on a monthly rent of rupees 50,000. That's it. Nothing else is given. When this type of data is given in such a scenario, you have to remember that nothing else is given about gross annual value, municipal tax, or anything. In such a case, your computation will always have this 30% deduction. So 30% is standard. Standard means fixed. It is irrespective of whether or not any other information is given in the sum. So even if only rent received is given, which will become your GAV, from that rent received, you have to remember that you have to compulsorily adjust this 30%, which is your standard deduction, and that is why it is called as the standard deduction. So remember this particular point. Then comes the most important part, that is the exemptions. Though this is not very significant from the perspective of our exams, just only for academic purposes, you should know that these are those scenarios where the income arising from house property has been exempted from tax. Now then we went to the most important part, that is our charging section. Now for the purpose of covering a particular income under this head of house property, the three basic criterion that you need to compulsorily satisfy together. Sorry. First, the income should pertain to land, building, but which land? Land which is apportioned to building, and which building? Any building. So most important point is here, the income is the income arising out of any building. Second, land, but not every land or any land. It is only that land which is attached to the building, which is forming part of the building. Now, what type of value they are talking about? They are talking about the annual value. If you remember, we had discussed on this point also. First, there could be a one-time value whereby you get some amount by selling off, disposing of that property. That is not covered under the head house property. They want to cover the income which arises, which accrues on annual basis. That is a recurring income, which may be rent, which may be the hire charges, which may be the usage charges, which may be the lease charges. You can call it by any name. It is the recurring income. Second important point about annual value is when they have used the term annual value, they mean the value which is either actually received or which the property can command, the property can earn. That is what is the annual value. So these are the two important points about the term annual value. One, it is recurring, and second, it need not only be the real value, it can also be the notional value. Third most important point, you should be owner or deemed owner. So where you yourself are a tenant in a property, in that particular case, even if you are getting rent, your income is not house property because you are not owner. So when all these three conditions are satisfied, that is the first step of being classified under the head house property. However, despite of all these three conditions being satisfied, there are certain scenarios where you will not be covered under HP because these are exceptions. First, where along with the property, you have also given some assets or facilities together, which is called as composite letting. And this giving together, this clubbing of both these things, that is the property and the assets, is compulsory by the contract, and no one is ready to take that particular property without the facilities, without the assets. Such a case is called as an inseparable composite letting. So two things are given together, that is why composite. And inseparable means that the contract is such or the requirement is such that independently we are not ready to take the property without these assets. So the rent of such a particular case, which is called as composite letting, will not be taxed under the head house property. It may go to PGBP if giving such properties on rent is your business, or it will go to other sources. Most important point number two, the property where you are running your own business. So your own office, your own factory, your own godown, which is employed in your business. The income expenses arising from such a property will only go to PGBP. They cannot go to any other head. They cannot come to HP head also. And third, where you are in the business of giving properties on rent, such a business is called as letting out business. Now, when you are in the business of giving properties on rent, there are two possibilities. One, the properties that you are giving on rent is commercial, or two, the properties that you are giving on rent is residential. Remember one thing, first check, is your business giving the properties on rent? Answer is yes, then only you will come to this point. Your business is not giving properties on rent. You have one, two properties which you gave rent, which you have given on rent. That does not makes it your business of giving properties on rent. You should have a proper business setup where you have multiple properties which you are regularly giving on rent, which you keep on adapting as per the requirement of the business, as per the requirement of the commercial world, and that is what is called as you are in the business of giving properties on rent. Simply because you have any property and that property you have given on rent, it may be one or two or three, that makes no difference. Still, your income gets covered under the head house property, both for residential and for commercial property. But where you are in the business of giving such properties on rent, where the nature of your activity is such that you are working on it as a business, then you come to this third point. Now, in this third point, the two possibilities is whether the property that you are giving on rent is commercial or residential. If it is commercial, then you are not covered under the head HP. You will go to the head PGBP. This is what is the third exception. However, if you are in the business of giving a residential property on rent, in that case, there is an amendment by the previous budget, that is Finance Act 2024, which has stated that giving a residential property on rent, where even though giving on rent is your business, still such a scenario, that is you have given a residential property on rent, will not be covered under the head PGBP, and hence it will come back to income from house property. So that's what I said. For this third point, you have to be very clear. First, check whether you are in the business of giving properties on rent. Only then you come to this third exception. Second, if you are in this business, then check whether your property is commercial. Yes, your rental income goes to PGBP head. If your property is residential, then your rental income comes to HP head. This is how we apply this exception. And then the requirement that you should be owner also has a requirement that you may be a deemed owner. Deemed owner is a person where the property is not in the name, but the law has presumed you to be the owner. What are these cases? Case one, as you can see, you have given your property to your spouse or to your minor child. So the property is given to your spouse or minor child as gift. So today the property is not in your name, but the law presumes under section 27 that you are still the owner, and hence the rental income coming from that property will be taxed in your hands and not in the hands of your spouse or your minor child. But this rule has an exception. First, in case of spouse, you have given this property to spouse without an agreement to live apart, that is not because of divorce. If this property is given to spouse because of divorce, then the rental income is not taxed to you. You are not deemed owner. Similarly, the minor child to whom you have given this property should not be a minor married daughter, Balika Vadhu. So if your child is a minor married daughter, then whatever property you have given to her will not be clubbed with your income. That rental income will not be added to your income. Second case where you are deemed to be owner is where you are staying in some inherited property of which partition has not happened. So maybe still the property stands in the name of your ancestors because no partition is done. But today you are having the complete control. You are occupying the property for a long time. That is what is they have termed as holder of impartible estate. Impartible means where partition is not done. Holder means where you are occupying that particular property for a substantial period of time where nobody else is claiming on that property. In such a case, you are said to be holder of impartible estate. Third, property held by member of cooperative society, company, association having right to enjoy property. What is this? This third scenario is where you have purchased a flat in a housing society. In a housing society, even though you have purchased the flat legally, the housing society is owner of the entire property, the building, the open spaces, and each and every unit in that building. Hence, legally, they are the owner. But since you have paid, you are actually occupying. All laws consider you as the owner, but that is what is on the deeming basis. Fourth, where you have booked a property in an under construction building. The building is not yet complete, so legally the builder cannot transfer the property to you. But if the builder has given you the possession, you have made the complete payment, then as per section 53A, the property is assumed to be transferred to you and you are deemed owner. Last scenario of deemed ownership is where you have taken a property under lease and the lease period is 12 or more years. So where the property taken by you on lease is for 12 years or more, you are deemed owner. So these are the scenarios where you are deemed to be owner, and in these cases, you will be required to pay tax on such rental income. So this is all about the charging section. I'll just pause here for a minute to take your questions or doubts. So we had discussed this in detail in our previous sessions. Now, if anybody of you having any questions, doubts relating to any of these points, you can put it across to me. Students, I'm waiting for your inputs. Anybody having any doubts, any questions, any inputs, anything you may have read from module which is not understood, because I've asked you to read the module and come. Acha, that is why, because students did not join the class. Rehana, please put this to our technical person, that many students are having difficulty, because today when I started, there was no one except one person at the time of 6 o'clock. So Manishji, can you just check in this? Okay, so link is working ना? हाँ, वही मैंने आपको स्टार्टिंग में पूछा कि क्या हुआ प्रॉब्लम, सो देयर वाज सम। ठीक है, नो वरीज। Anupa beta, there is nothing new. I'm still revising since students were not able to join. So I was revising whatever we did in our previous lecture. So don't worry, you have not missed anything. Whatever is done till now is from the previous lecture only. So if in any of these points you have a doubt, we had discussed all these cases. These are the cases of deemed ownership, where you are deemed to be owner. In all these cases, the property is not standing in your name, it is in the name of some other person. But the law says you will be taxed for the rental income because you are deemed to be owner of such property. Now, if any of you has a doubt with any of these points, please feel free to ask. You may even unmute yourself if there is any particular questions relating to any of this. Sir, I'm not able to open the chat box. What is happening? It is showing that there is some new chat, but I'm not able to open it. Okay, students, if anybody has a question, please you can ask me. See, these are the same points that we have discussed in the previous class. I'm just repeating them. Anybody not understood any of these points relating to the charging section, you may raise your hand. We can discuss. Please, students, don't put right now in chat box. Somehow, I don't know what is the problem at my end. Chat box, I can see on the top that there is some new chat, but I'm not able to open it. So if you have any doubts, please raise your hand. Yes, I can see one hand raise. Yes,
Good
beta.
evening, sir.
Beta, how do you pronounce your name?
Kinnari.
Kinnari, beta. Please tell me.
Good evening,
Good
sir.
evening. Very good evening, Bida.
Sir, there was some error with the portal. We just joined, many of us. So
No worries, Bida. Bida,
could you
I'm
please
still
repeat
repeating
anything?
what we did in the last class because this I got to know. So I'm still, you can see this is still the second page.
Okay,
We
okay, sir.
completed all this in the previous class. I'm just revising for the purpose of everybody. So don't worry. You all have missed nothing.
Okay.
We are
Thank you
just
so much, sir.
revising our previous class. I'm yet to start the new one.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, anybody having any questions with anything in the previous class? Please raise your hand. I'll unmute you. We can take up your doubts. Students, anybody any doubts or should I proceed? So we discuss about the charging section, the requirements of the charging section, then the requirement of being treated as deemed owner. So if anybody has any doubts right now, please don't put in the chat box. Somehow, I don't know why I'm not able to read. So you can just raise your hand. I'll unmute you. Okay. Now in the format, the first requirement is computing GAV, for which if you all remember, we even took a practical case scenario where we discussed multiple cases in that, how to compute GAV. Now, before you understand computation of GAV, you have to understand there are two types of properties. One, which is termed as let out, that is, which is given on rent. Two, which you have kept with yourself for your own use, which is called as self-occupied. Now, what we are discussing right now is the computation of HP income for a let out property. Now, in case of let out property, you will have actual rent because the property is given on rent. So there is some actual rent also. But before we find out the actual rent, you have to go to the expected rent. What is expected rent? Section 23 bracket 1 says it is higher of two values. One is the municipal rent, that is the value as per the municipal records for your property. This is available with your area's municipality, so you can go and get these details from there. Compare this with the fair rent. Fair rent is the rent which similar property commands in your area. So it is simply put in your same locality, in your same building. Whatever is the rent of any other flat similar to your flat is what is the fair rent. So find out both these values, take whichever is higher. The higher of these two values is your expected rent for the time being. Now, after this, check whether Rent Control Act is applicable. Now, Rent Control Act is today not applicable to major part of India. It is limited only to very few cities, not even states. It is limited to very few cities. So there is a high probability that in real life scenario, you will not have this figure, which is called as the standard rent, because this is the figure given by the Rent Control Act. Now, if there is a standard rent, then whatever was the higher value in step one, compare it with the standard rent. And now your final answer will be the lower of these two values. This is finally your expected rent. And then you have to find out actual rent. How does this figure AR is computed? Take the annual rent, because anyways, our charging section also uses the word annual value. So annual rent is, let us say you have fixed the rent of 50,000 per month. So 50,000 into 12 months is your annual rent. Now it may be received or it may be still outstanding. That makes no difference, because if you remember, our HP head computation is to be done on due basis. Fine. Now from this annual rent, you have to deduct two types of rents. One is the unrealized, which in our simple accounting sense, it is your bad debts. And second is the vacancy rent. That is the rent for the period when there was no tenant, the property was lying vacant. So unrealized rent, that is bad debts. Vacancy rent, that is the rent for the period your property was lying vacant. Now, when you find out actual rent by taking the difference of these three figures, we call it as AR for short. Now, while computing GAV, you have to compare your AR with the ER that you have calculated above. The possibility is your AR is greater than ER. If this is the case, AR becomes the GAV. Now remember one thing, students, ER is a 12 months figure because here the values that you have taken, municipal, fair, standard, they are all 12 monthly. But your AR may not be 12 monthly because you have deducted two different rents from it. So there is a high probability that it may be not a 12 months rent. Still, the law prefers taking AR as the GAV. So this is the basic ideology. They want to take actual rent only. They do not want to take notional rent. That is the expected rent. So if AR is greater than ER, then straight away GAV is AR, no doubt. But if ER is greater than AR, now as I said, the law does not want to take the notional rent straight away. So what it says, if ER value is greater than AR, then it says, wait, find out a new value called as ARV. How is this calculated? It is your AR, which you are having, plus VR. So whatever AR you had computed here in this step by taking a difference of these three values, this AR, in that you add back the vacancy rent. So the new value that you get is ARV. Now you compare ER with this new value ARV. Again, there are two possibilities. Now this new value ARV is greater than ER, or still the ER is greater than even this new value ARV. If now this new value is greater than the ER, then the loss is okay. Now the GAV is again AR. Remember, ARV is never the GAV. It is just for comparison purpose that you have found out this figure. So again, they are saying GAV is AR. But if even after this ER is still greater, they say that fine, now we have no choice. So GAV will be taken as your ER only. Now somebody was asking me, ki, sir, what is the meaning of this note in the last lecture? So I said, let us first understand the practical working which we have done, which is the next slide, which we have already solved. So what this note says, where actual rent is lower than your expected rent, but why? Because of vacancy. Then GAV is actual rent only. This is what is this working. So this working that we did, we computed ARV by adding back VR, and then we compared ARV with ER, and ARV is greater. What it shows that had there been no vacancy, please understand the language, the literal meaning of this note, because somebody was asking me in the previous class. I'm now trying to explain it literally after doing all the practical sums in the previous class. So what this language literally means that had there been no vacancy, what would have been your actual rent? This amount, ARV, would have been my actual rent. If there would have been no vacancy, then my actual rent would have been this. And then if this would have been actual rent, it would have been higher than ER. It means right now, my AR is less than ER only because of vacancy. Had there been no vacancy, my AR was greater than ER. So they are saying in such case, GAV will be AR only. So that is why where ARV is greater than ER, you take the GAV as AR only. So this is that language impact. See, this is where the law is very beautiful. I call it as beautiful, though actually it becomes very tricky, very uh, troublesome. But I call it as beautiful for the simple reason, the more the law is tricky, the more is the value for professionals. The more the law is easy, AI will be having more dominance over us. So remember this. People fear the new AI coming up. I say you need not fear because the AI cannot replace, at least the AI what we are seeing and what can be developed in next 4, 5 years, 10 years, cannot replace everything from the human brain. See, what is AI doing? Please understand. No AI, I repeat, no AI is capable of giving analysis. What AI is presently doing is copying, pasting. When you give any prompt, when you give any command to the AI, what AI does is whatever is available in the domain which the AI can search, it will search everything, it will collate everything, and it will bring everything at one place. But it cannot give you any analysis. So please don't fear AI. You have to learn the AI tools because it will make your work easier. But that will only be for the repetitive type of work. That will only be for the work where you only need copy paste data. Where you need analysis, where you need interpretation, AI will not be helpful. Correct? Is this clear to all? Great. Now I can see the chat also. So there is something, no doubt, sir. Proceed, sir. Point 4, sir. Priyanshi is saying if ER is less than AR, AR is GAV. If AR is greater than ER, then we will consider AR plus VR. Yes, beta. This is, I think, you had mentioned in the previous class also. Perfect. Pragya is saying, sir, but agar AR is lower than ER, not because of vacancy, but also because of unrealized rent. Exactly, Pragya. And that is where the second scenario comes, that ER is still greater than ARV. It means your AR was not lower only because of vacancy, it became lower also because of unrealized rent. In that case, the final answer is, Pragya, the answer is your GAV is now ER. So what the law says in their language, only when because of vacancy AR was lower, we will still take AR as the GAV. That we have done in the second case. Third case, that is the last case, where AR is lower because of some other reason besides vacancy. Now the law says we have no choice, we'll take ER as the GAV. Fine. Yes. Yes, Priyanshi. Correct. Okay. So students, I am sure now this language also is clear. So we should also learn how to interpret the legal language. So this is one such beautiful example of that. Okay. So this was the case study scenario where we concluded in the previous session after we understood the practical workings of GAV. Now we will proceed today with the next part in this chapter. प्रज्ञा is saying, sir, last lecture में इसके example के case 8 में case 8. Okay, प्रज्ञा is saying case 8. देख लेते प्रज्ञा. So you are talking about this case 8. So in this case, ER is 10, right? AR is this minus this minus this. So how much is AR? It is 975. Correct? So expected rent is 10. AR is 975. Now, since AR is less, we find out ARV. ARV will be how much, beta? ARV will be 975 plus 25. So it will be again 10. Now, if it is 10, we compare this with this. The question is, was this less than ER because of vacancy? Answer is yes. Because had there been vacancy, it will not be less. It will be equal to, but it will not be less. And since we satisfy the note, hence GAV is AR. Pragya, I hope you got this. See the language. What it says, because of vacancy, if AR is less. Now, if you add back vacancy, AR is not less, it is equal to. Are you getting this point? So in that particular case, we go back to the answer, that is AR. Sir, यहाँ पे AR is lower than ER because of unrealized rent. No, beta. Here AR is not lower. Here AR becomes equal to ER after adding back vacancy. It means जो भी वो lower दिख रहा था वो vacancy की वजह से lower दिख रहा था. अगर आप vacancy add back करते हो, it is not lower. Understand this. It is equal. It is not lower. So where it is not lower, after adding back vacancy, it means GAV is AR. I hope you understood better now, Pragya. See, that is the beauty of the language. That is where I like this type of legal or law language interpretations. Oh, sir, someone asked in the group that this rule is for section 23(1)(a), 1(b) or section 23(1)(c). But it is for entire 23(1) because 23(1) deals with 23(1) deals with let out property. But still, now somebody has raised this question in the group. I don't know which group you're talking about, but if somebody has raised this question in the group and it is relating to the legal part, then it is my duty as your teacher to show you the legal part. So let us go back to the law. See how the law looks like. So that because now your answer is particularly relating to the section clause A, B. So let us go and ask this question to the law itself, right? Okay, but then maybe I'm not part of that WhatsApp group. No problem. I'm answering it here. Just let that page get uploaded. What the problem is with the government website. So I'm just repeating the question till then. So there was some question in your WhatsApp group where someone asked that this rule, I believe you are talking about this rule of after adding vacancy, before adding vacancy, whether this rule is only for 23(1)(a) or B, or is it for 23(1)(c)? Correct. So 23 bracket 1, clause A, clause B, clause C. It is for which one? My answer is this rule is for entire section 23(1) because 23(1) deals with the case where the property is let out. 23(2), 23(t), 23(4), these are for other cases. Let us see. So I'll type section 23 here. Now see the beauty of law. What does 23 reads like? It says for the purpose of section 22. Now 22 is our charging section. It means the definition that we are reading over here or the working that we are studying over here is applicable only to HP head because this section 23 starts with this language for the purpose of 22 and 22 is the charging section for HP head. So what we are studying is only relevant to HP head. The annual value of any property shall be deemed to be first the sum for which the property might reasonably be expected to let from year to year, that is your expected rent, or where the property or any part of the property is let and the actual rent receivable by the owner in respect thereof is in excess of the sum referred to in clause A, the amount so received receivable. So this is our first case scenario where AR is greater than ER. So as per clause B, where AR is greater than ER, your GAV is AR, right? So this is as per clause B. Then clause C, where the property or any part of the property is let and was vacant during the whole or any part of the previous year, and owing to such vacancy, the actual rent received receivable by the owner in respect was less than the sum referred to in clause A, then the amount so received receivable, that is again AR. So this is our second case scenario that where after adding VR to AR, that is our new figure ARV is now greater than ER or it is equal to ER. In that case, GAV will be AR. Now the question asked to me was, that is in your WhatsApp group, somebody put this question that whether this rule of VR adding and comparing ARV is applicable to A, B or C. I said it is applicable to entire 23(1) because 23(1) A, B, C are the different possibilities A, B, C. So you have to consider this rule of adding VR and checking it for all cases which are falling in 23(1). That is where the property is let out. I hope this is clear to all, even though in particular, the case scenario where we take ARV is higher than ER, and in that case, we take GAV as AR, that is particularly mentioned in clause C. But again, I repeat, it is applicable to entire 23(1). So Pragya, I hope I'm able to answer the query which was put in the WhatsApp group. So whoever had put this query, they are able to get the answer for this. ठीक है. So may I proceed now? Now, just before I proceed, let me take you back to the format. So in this format, students, we require different values. What are these different values? First, I need GAV, which we have understood how to find out. Municipal tax, you need not compute. It is given in the question. If there is any municipal tax paid, it would be given. You have to simply subtract it. Then standard deduction, nothing would be given in the sum. You have to remember it by yourself. So out of four values, standard deduction and municipal tax requires no working as such. The last value, that is interest on borrowed capital, which simply means interest on loan, requires some working. What it is, that is what now we are going to discuss. So now what I'm going to explain you is relating to interest on borrowed capital, which is your second deduction under section 24, that is under section 24 bracket small b. Now what this says, again, since the method is accrual, this deduction is also on accrual basis. Next, interest on outstanding interest is not allowed as deduction. So only the interest on the original principal is allowed as deduction. If you default in payment of any installment and hence there is interest on interest, because now the outstanding interest also becomes your principal, what happens generally in case of any banking scenario, you will not be allowed deduction for this additional interest. So only the interest on the principal amount is eligible. Next, at the time of taking loan, many times the bank charges some bank charges or charges some commission brokerage. So any other expense, even relating to the same loan which you have taken for that house, is not eligible for deduction. Only the interest on such loan is eligible for deduction. Most important, this will be required when you are dealing with the question. You will be allowed deduction for interest only when the loan which you have taken should be for the house property. I repeat, the deduction for interest would be allowed only when your loan is for the house property. Now, what do I mean by for the house property? Either for purchasing it or for constructing it or for repairing, renewal, decorating, etc. But it should be for the house property. If you have taken the loan for any other purpose, like let us say business or your personal use, even though you have given the house property as mortgage, as security for such loan, you will not get deduction here, because here we are considering the income coming from that house property. Hence, the expenses of the house property, expenses for the house property are only allowed, and any other expense which is not having any connection with the house property are not allowed. So here the interest deduction is allowed only when the loan is for the house property. For means either purchase or construction or repair, renewal, etc. of the house property. Now the working part. Now when I'm saying I'll allow you interest, there are two types of interest. One is the current year interest. Here there should be apostrophe. So one is the current year's interest, or there could be a pre-construction interest. I will allow you deduction for both. How? Current year पूरा interest लेना है, pre-construction interest का 1/5 लेना है, because this will be allowed over a period of 5 years. I'm sure the first doubt immediately that will come to you is, sir, what is pre-construction? Don't worry, that we are going to study and discuss. For the time being, remember how in your accounts you have something called as preliminary expenses, that is expenses incurred before commencement of business. Similarly here, expenses incurred for the construction of house, but before the house is ready, that is still the house is under construction stage, that period interest is called as pre-construction. You find out that entire period's interest till the house is under construction, and whatever is that interest, you will take deduction over 5 years. Hence, every year the amount allowed is 1/5. So how much is the deduction? It is current year plus pre-construction. But how much of pre-construction? 1/5. Now comes an important question, sir, is there a limit? Now for this purpose, you have to remember that there are two types of properties. One is a self-occupied property, and then there is any other category of property. Now, whatever limits are there, as you can see, 30,000, 2 lakhs, then there is the old regime, the new regime. All this is applicable only where the property is self-occupied. Where the property is not self-occupied, that is, it is let out or deemed let out, there is no limit. But for the time being, right now, I will say let us not get into this limit business. Let us first only understand how to compute this amount. So we will now only be focusing on computing this amount, which is the amount eligible for deduction. It may not be your final deduction, because final deduction will depend upon whether it is self-occupied, whether it is let out, whether it is old scheme, whether it is new scheme, etc., etc. So we will not get into that. So I'm just not dealing with this right now. So right now, what I want to explain you is, let us first understand how to calculate this amount. Let me add this, eligible for deduction. It is not yet your deduction, because what will be deduction? That will be decided after comparing it with your limit. And limit will depend upon many factors, which I'm not yet interested in getting into. Because first you need to compute your interest. Then the question will come of comparing it with limit. Fine. So like right now, forget the limit part. You are computing HP income. While computing HP income, you require GAV. We have done that. Municipal tax given in the question. If not given, it means you have not paid. So no need to deduct. Standard deduction, you have to deduct by default. That is why it is standard. Now what is left is interest. So we first understand how to compute this amount of interest. Then after computing interest, then we'll go to the limits and all. Now for computing interest, as you can see, there are two possibilities, or there are two situations, two types of interest. One is the current year interest. One is the pre-construction interest. Correct? Now, what is this two? How to compute these two? That is now what I'm going to explain you with the help of case studies. Bunny Preet, beta, be patient. Everything we'll discuss. Let me directly come to the case study to explain you the working, because understanding theory theoretically is very boring, and at times you will get confused more. Understanding any theory or a provision with a practical example is more interesting. So again, there are two case studies on construction, pre-construction interest, computation sums, or simply calculation of interest on borrowed capital as required under 24B. So Mr. Anand has taken a housing loan. The loan is of rupees 48 lakhs at the rate of 10% per annum. Now, this loan was taken on 1st August 2020. Dates are very important. Be focused. The construction started and on the same date. So he took loan on this date. On the same date, he started the construction. Fine. Now, important, the loan is repayable on 1st of August 30. So you have taken a 10-year loan. And your construction is completed on. Now, in one case study, I have made it multiple case studies. So first possibility, construction is completed on 1st October 23 or 1st January 26 or 1st December 30 or 1st October 32. So even Bunny Preet's question gets addressed here. Now, obviously, all four possibilities cannot be there. So we are going with a possibility at a time. So what is your question? You have to compute the total amount of interest that is eligible for deduction, right? So my working is calculation of interest eligible (24) clause B. Now for this, I generally follow a working note. So one is the financial year, one is the current year interest, and then you have the 1/5 of pre-construction interest, and this will be your total interest which we are looking for. Correct? So first column, financial year, not assessment or previous year, just to avoid confusion right now. So financial year, then the current year interest, then the 1/5 of pre-construction interest, and the total interest. Now we start with the working. Now I have some important questions for you. These questions will make you realize and understand the provisions. Look at it from your accounting perspective. In accounts, when will you start computing your net profit? The answer is the year in which the business starts. And that is why in accounts, you have a concept called as preliminary. So it may happen that you have incorporated your company in the year 2022. But since 2022 up to this 2025, your company was in the process of setting up. So it acquired land, it started constructing the factory building, it started bringing machines, it started installing, it did the trial run. At the parallel time, it was starting, it had started making its corporate office, it had started making the workers workers residential quarters, then go down for its raw material, its finished goods. So from 2022 till date, the company has not started business, but it is incurring many expenses. Now, whatever capital expenses it is incurring on acquisition or construction of assets, there is no problem. It is getting capitalized by the name of land, building, plant machinery, furniture, assets, etc. But the revenue expenses which the company is incurring, those expenses, it cannot show anywhere. Why? Because there is no P&L. Why there is no P&L? Because there is no business. So what it does is, it keep on just noting those expenses, and all these expenses which the company has incurred from 2022, that is the date the company was incorporated, till the date the company actually starts its actual business or production. Let us say the production starts on 15th of October 2025. Till that date, whatever revenue expenses the company will be incurring, which it cannot write off in P&L because we are not preparing any P&L, because there is no sales, there is no business, all these revenue expenses will be termed as preliminary. So the expenses which have to be capitalized are capitalized, they are part of balance sheet. They are being carried forward under the category of assets. But all the revenue expenses are being carried forward as preliminary. Now, the year when you complete all these activities and you start your business, which in my example, which I'm discussing, is 15th of October 25, you will prepare your P&L for the first time at the end of this financial year, that is 25-26. So from 25-26, you will start preparing your P&L, you will start showing your income and expenses and computing profit or loss. And then, having said this, understand one more thing. From this year only, that is 25-26, you will also start claiming the preliminary expenses in your P&L, either 1/5, 1/8, 1/10, depending upon your accounting policy. I hope this is very clear. I'm still talking about accounts. Now I explained all this because in this type of a typical question where you are required to compute interest, the first most question that you need to answer is, from which financial year you will start computing this interest deduction? I will equate it with my example. It is the same question like, from which year you will start preparing your P&L? And the answer is the year from which business starts. Similarly, here, from which year you will start computing your HP income, from which year you will start claiming this interest deduction. Same answer, the year in which my HP comes into existence, that is the year in which my construction is completed. So from which year I will start computing HP income? The year in which HP comes into existence. And be logical. Till there is no HP, how can you compute HP income or loss? I may have taken loan in the year 2020. So loan in my example is taken in the year 2020. But what is the use? In that year, I did not have HP. The HP is still under construction. I only started construction then. But till the HP is ready, how can I show HP head? Please understand the logic. There can be no head of income until and unless you have the source of income. Like today, you all have no source of income, so you all are not showing any head of income. Tomorrow, when you qualify, some of you may go into job, so you all will start showing salary head of income only, then not any other head. Those of you all would go into practice will start showing PGBP head of income, no other head. Slowly, steadily, you all will have some savings, you all will deposit, invest somewhere, you will start getting interest dividends. You all will show one more head of income, which is other sources, because you have that source. Until and unless there is the source, you cannot show computation. So the first rule, from which year I will start doing computation? The answer is the year in which the HP comes into existence. This is the year from which my HP head computation starts, and this is the year from which this working will start. So now tell me the answer. In the given case, we are discussing case 1, scenario A only. What will be the financial year from which I will start computing HP income? Good. Anubhav, Kinari, very good. Yes, who is Miss P? Miss P, what is your name? Priya, I want financial year, beta. Correct, Ritika. Deepika, be specific, give me the year. Correct, Ishan. Wrong, Pragya. Correct, Banipreet. Tanu, correct. Oh, yes, Smriti, I forgot. So, Smriti, your answer was yes, correct. No Minu, no Soumya. Soumya, I think you are mixing between assessment year, previous year. Skip that. Just answer me from financial year point of view. Yes, Rehana, but I'm not Rehana. Yeah, the date which you are mentioning is not correct. It is only financial year 23-24. No, Priya. So the answer, students, is same logic. From which year I'll show computation? The year in which I have my HP income. And in this example, it is the financial year 23-24. So my working for HP head would start from the financial year 23-24. Smriti, I'm sorry, but my Smriti is weak. So even though last time you had mentioned your name, but since my Smriti is weak, so I missed, I forgot that. No worries. Fine. Now, so I'll start computation. Remember the student, this is the golden rule. The computation will start from the year in which your HP comes into existence. In other words, the year in which the construction is completed, which in the first case scenario is 23-24. Now, this computation should be up to which financial year? Interesting. Pay attention now. Wherever I am having pre-construction interest, I just explained you that pre-construction will be allowed over 5 years. So one thing is for sure, you will have this working of interest for minimum 5 years because of this pre-construction interest, because that will be allowed compulsorily over 5 years. So for first 5 years, you are assured that you have your income, right? You have, sorry, interest deduction. But the question is, till when should be my concluding date? The answer is till the year I'm expected to have interest. Now, till what year I'm expected to have interest? See, we have two types of interest. One is the current year interest and one is the pre-construction. Now, I know pre-construction will go up to 5 years compulsorily because it is allowed in 5 installments. So 5 years anyways, you always will have the deduction because of at least pre-construction. But if my current year interest, current year means the every year interest, the interest which is applicable to that year is the current year interest, I will be getting deduction till the date I am paying this current year interest. And what will be this date? This date is the date of my loan repayability. So till my loan is going on, my current year interest will go on and my loan is going on up to financial year 30-31. So I will be having interest deduction up to the financial year 30-31. So please understand, compulsory 5 years interest deduction would be there for pre-construction, and the current year interest may be less than 5 years or more than 5 years. That depends upon when your loan is getting repaid. So for current year interest, the last date would be the date of repayment of loan, which in my example is financial year 30-31. So starting date, date of completion of construction. Then 5 years you have to write because up to 5 years you get pre-construction interest deduction. Then You will extend this date depending upon till when is your loan repayable, because till the date your loan is repayable, you will have the current year interest as deduction. So in this case, 1A, this is the total number of years for which I will have my interest deduction. Yes, beta Priya, it is very much possible that my loan is repaid within 5 years. See, you see my case scenarios B, C, D. Why I have created so many case scenarios? It is to cater all these case scenarios. That is my loan is getting repaid within 5 years. Still remember, even if this loan is getting repaid within 5 years, what will happen? I will have current year interest, let us say only for 3 years. Why? Because after that, my loan is not there, but my pre-construction will still go for 5 years. That is why I'm saying compulsorily first 5 years you are going to have interest calculation. Maybe for current year also, may not be for current year, but you'll also always have for pre-construction because it will last for 5 years. And then current year interest will last till the date the loan is. So current year interest depends upon the loan repayment, that you have to understand. And it may be less than or more than the 5 years period. I hope this is clear to all. Priyanshi, we are not paying interest twice. Rather, whatever interest I have paid, I'm taking deduction. Just wait, you'll get the answer. Don't worry. Fine, Priyanshi, you will get the answer. Now, let us start finding out the interest amount. So firstly, what is current year interest? Current year interest is interest of the same financial year for which we are talking about. So if we are talking about financial year 23-24, the interest of 23-24 is the current year interest. If you're talking about financial year 24-25, the interest of 24-25 is the current year interest. Now, what is 1 year interest? 1 year interest is 480 into 10%, that is 4,80,000 is your 1 year interest, because 48 lakhs, 10% of that is 480. I'm writing the figures in thousands. So my current year interest every year is 480. Is this fine? However, in the year 3031, since my loan will be repaid by 1st of August 30, so in 3031, I won't be paying, or I won't be having the whole year interest. I will be having interest only for April, May, June, and July. Only for 4 months I would be having interest, because my loan is repaid on 1st of August. So in the year 3031, my loan will be only for April, May, June, July, 4 months. I hope this is clear. So for 4 months, the interest would be how much? I think 1,60,000. So in the last year, my interest would be 160. Tanu, don't worry. 5 year not clear. You will get to know once I go to that point. Yes, Deepika, you're right. Anuba, beta, you're not paying the pre-construction interest. You have already incurred the pre-construction interest when the loan was going on. Now you are taking the deduction of that pre-construction interest. Yes, Ritika, I'll come to your point. You have a very good point, Ritika. Just give me some time. So students, firstly, understand this working. So my current year interest, that is the interest applicable to every year, is 480. But in the last year, since the loan will be repaid on 1st August, I'll have only 4 months interest. Now I need to find out the pre-construction interest. So now I'm coming to calculation of. Now students, pay attention. Don't put anything in chat box, because every time you all put something, I have to go to the chat box to see what you want to say or ask. So now for next 5 minutes, don't say anything, just focus. And please listen to each and every word which I am saying, because again, now I'll be giving you some simple logic, some simple trick, which will make your entire working very simple, which otherwise, as per the legal language, which I will read after this, is very difficult to understand, right? So what is pre-construction interest? There is a legal language to it. My answer to this is interest not covered in current year interest. This is my one line answer as to what is pre-construction interest. There is a legal answer. I'll come to that legal definition and the legal working part, but I'm sure when I go to the legal working part, it will be slightly difficult to understand. Hence, I'm first giving you the simplified, the logical part. See, the logic is simple. Please understand the logic. You will be paying interest starting from 1st August. That is a date when you have taken the loan, correct? From this date to this date, you are paying interest, correct? Loan taken, loan repaid. You agree to this? Your interest will be exactly for this 10 years period. Now, this 10 years period interest, as per the law, is broken up into two categories. One is current year and one is pre-construction. So you can get deduction of only 10 years interest logically because you are paying 10 years interest only. So logically, आप जो इंटरेस्ट पे कर रहे हो उसी का डिडक्शन मिलेगा का न कम न ज्यादा. अब आपने इंटरेस्ट पे किया है 1 अगस्त 20 से लेके 1 अगस्त 30, so you should get deduction for interest of 10 years. But legally, as per the provisions of this section, the interest is bifurcated into two categories: current year interest, pre-construction interest. Now, current year interest will be every year's interest. So, आपका year कहाँ से वर्किंग शुरू होगा एचपी हेड का, एज आई एक्सप्लेन अर्लियर 23-24 से. तो 23-24 से जो भी हर साल का इंटरेस्ट आएगा उसका डिडक्शन तो आपको मिलने वाला है अंडर द कैटेगरी, अंडर द नेम ऑफ करेंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट. अब जो इंटरेस्ट इसके पहले का है, बिफोर दिस, जो छूट रहा है, दैट इज व्हाट इज प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन. दिस इज व्हाट आई एम सेइंग हियर. सो द इंटरेस्ट फॉर द अर्लियर पीरियड which is not covered in the current year interest column is simply pre-construction interest. This is the logic, simplest logic, because now when I give you the legal answer, what the provision says, what the section says, it is too technical. But see, sections are devised using some logic. जिस किसी ने section लिखा होगा कुछ logic से लिखा होगा. वो logic अगर हम समझे तो interpreting, decoding the most technical and the difficult seeming section would also be easy. Now I go to the section language. What is pre-construction interest? For this, the section says first find out pre-construction period. And the interest of this period is pre-construction interest. So what is pre-construction period? It will start from the date of loan taken, क्योंकि इस दिन से interest शुरू होता है. In my example, loan taken date is 1st August 2020. So pre-construction period will start from here. Now this pre-construction period will end on one of the two dates, whichever is earlier. See, now I'm going to the legal language, और legal language में यही आता है, whichever is earlier, later, not less than, greater than, etc. So starting date is fixed, loan taken date, क्योंकि यहीं से आपका इंटरेस्ट शुरू होगा तो यहाँ से मैं डिडक्शन अलाउ कर रहा हूँ. So pre-construction period will start from the date of loan, which in my example is 1st August. Then it will continue up to what dates? They are giving two dates. The date for completion is loan repayment date, or now the technical part, 31st March, immediately preceding completion of construction. This is the technical one. So they are saying find out pre-construction period. The interest of this period is pre-construction interest. When does pre-construction period will start? It will start with the date of loan taken. That is in our example, 1st August 2020. And when this period will end, it will end on one of these two dates, either this date or this date, whichever is earlier. Now I'll put down these dates. What is my loan repayment date in this case study? It is 31st August 2030. ठीक है? Now, students, give me this date, the date as per this language. क्या बात है? मीनू, यू आर रॉन्ग. करेक्ट. ईशान, किनारी, प्रिया, सौम्या, अनुभव, दिनेश, अनन्या, स्मृति, अलमास, तनु. Perfect. So the date which I am getting for this language is 31st March 2023. Now, as per the legal language, your pre-construction period will be from this date to one of these dates, whichever is earlier. So it is this date. So if I have to write pre-construction period properly, it is 1st August 2020 to 31st March 2023. How much period is this? It is 2 years and 8 months. Am I right, students? 2 years and 8 months is this period. 7. How can it be 2 years and 7 months, Pragya? I think it is 2 years, 8 months. Yes, Priya, loan is repaid on 1st August 2030. So what do you want to ask, Beda? Loan is repaid on 1st August 2030. So what do you want to ask, Priya? Okay, understood. Thank you, Priya, for highlighting. So by mistake, I had written here 31st, it is 1st. Okay. Now, this is my pre-construction period, 2 years, 8 months. Now I can find out pre-construction interest. So interest of 2 years plus 8 months. See, my 1 year interest is 480 into 2 years, correct? So this is 2 years interest plus interest of 8 months is 3,20,000. So my total pre-construction interest is 1280. Please confirm. Please confirm. Just a minute, students. So 1280 students. Now make 1/5 of this. So 1/5 of 1280, 256, Anubhav is saying. So my pre-construction 256, 256, 256, 256, 256. That's it. Now this is the working students. So current year plus 1/5 pre-construction is total. So this total becomes for the first year 736, second year 736, third year 736, fourth year 736, fifth year 736, then 480, then 480, and then 160. So this is the total amount which is eligible. I'm not saying this is the amount of deduction. This now you will put in the different case scenarios where you will find out whether it is self-occupied, whether it is let out, whether old regime, new regime, whether there is limit, no limit, whatever. And then you will finally decide the amount of deduction. But before you decide amount, before you compare with the limit, you should first know what is the actual interest. So this is the actual interest. And this is the whole working of the interest computation given under 24 clause B. Now, students, whoever had whatever doubt, somebody was asking me, sir, whether it will be double. Somebody was having some question why we are paying for 5 years again, something. Now, put all your questions with the perspective of this particular example, and you'll get the answers. Yes, Soumya. So Soumya is saying, sir, this means pre-construction interest can be claimed in the next 5 years after or from the completion of construction. So Soumya, please equate this with my example of preliminary of business. When will you start claiming preliminary expenses deduction in your P&L? Only when you actually start doing business. Because still you have not started business, there is no P&L, there is no sales. Where will you show these expenses? So as I was explaining you in my example, Soumya, at the start, we keep on accumulating these expenses in our balance sheet, calling it as preliminary expenses only. And the year in which my production or my business starts, from that year I start apportioning that expense maybe over 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever we have decided in accounts. Same logic applies over here. The year in which my construction is completed, that is the HP comes into existence, I can do HP head computation as per the HP head format. And then from that year up to 5 years, whatever was the past period interest, which you could not claim as deduction because there was no HP, so no HP head, so no HP computation, all the past period interest is now called as pre-construction interest. And that interest you can now onwards claim as 1/5, obviously along with the current year interest which is going on, because still your loan is going on. That is why you have both interest current year plus 1/5 pre-construction. Priya, what is the amount for eligible deduction? I couldn't understand, like, is the eligible, and actually what we deduct differs from eligible. See, beta, this amount is the amount which is now eligible for deduction. Eligible means you can take this much deduction. But now whether this will be deduction or it will be less than this amount, that will depend when we compare it with the limits which are yet to be studied, because the limits are dependent upon the nature of whether it is self-occupied or let out, whether you are going for the old regime or new regime, Priya. So right now what we have calculated is eligible. Eligible means आप इतना डिडक्शन ले सकते हो. अब इतना मिलेगा क्या, ये डिपेंड करेगा आगे जब हम डिस्कस करेंगे लिमिट्स. Sir, yes, now I can relate what you said regarding accounts. Very good, Soumya. Students, so the basic logic is आपको पूरे 10 साल का इंटरेस्ट का डिडक्शन मिलना है, क्योंकि आपने 1 अगस्त 20 से 1 अगस्त 30 तक का इंटरेस्ट भरा है. उसको मैंने डिवाइड कर दिया इनटू 2 नेम्स, करंट ईयर, प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन. अब मैं लॉ हूं, तो मुझे जैसा ब्रेकअप करना था मैंने किया, आपको मेरे ब्रेकअप से जाना है. दिस इज माय ब्रेकअप. तनु, सर करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट हम जब तक लोन पे करेंगे तब तक क्लेम कर सकते हैं. यस बेटा, बिकॉज आपका करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट तनु तभी तक आएगा जब तक लोन है. सो दैट इज व्हाई आई सेड ना, आपका एक करंट ईयर वाला कॉलम का लास्ट कब आएगा, जब लोन रीपेमेंट का ईयर आएगा. सो जब तक लोन चल रहा है तब तक करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट आएगा. लोन रीपेड, करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट स्टॉप्ड. यू आर राइट. आई होप दिस इज क्लियर. Anybody having any doubts? No? Chalo. Let me take you to the other case studies here, B and C and D. Yes, Kinari, you are right. So let me answer you with a practical case. Kinari, so that you'll understand this point better. Your question will be answered better. Right? Now I go to B part of this case. So we are on case B. Now in case B, everything else remains same. The only difference is that my construction is completed on 1st January 26. Now what will be the impact if construction is completed on 1st Jan 26? Then my year from which I can compute HP head will be which year? From which year will I get HP head, students? Tell me. From which year will I have HP head? In B? Rajveer, give me the year. You are giving me a date. Anubhav, correct. Deepika, not correct. Again, I think you are mixing assessment year, previous year. Kinari, correct. Smriti, right. Pradnya, right. Ishan, Priyanshi, right. Rehana, Anubhav, Soumya, right. Shailja, Deepika, Priya, Ananya, right. Rajveer, again you are giving me a date. Give me the year, beta. Ritika, right. Almas, right. Tanu, give me a year. Kirti, right. Divya, not right. So you will get deduction or you will start doing computation from 25-26 because the year in which your construction is completed is 25-26. Correct. Now again, I first do calculation of current year. How much will be my current year interest? That is interest of that year. So for 25-26, it is 480, again 480, again 480, again 480, 480. And for 30-31, it is 160. Because in that year, the loan is repaid on 1st August. So I'm paying only 4 months interest. So now my current year interest is like this. 480, 480, 480, 480, 480, and 160. Pre-construction. Again, the logic is same. What is pre-construction interest, which is not covered in current year? For which this is the working. Starting date 1st August, correct? Loan repayment date 1st August 30, correct? And now 31st March, immediately preceding completion of construction, this will become 31st March 25. So whichever is earlier is this date only. So now my pre-construction period is 1st August 20 to 31st March 25. So now it becomes 4 years, 8 months. So now the working is like this. Is it 2240? Priyanshi, tell me how 31st March 26. Tell me. Dhanush, how 31st March 26? What is my 31st March immediately preceding completion of construction? Construction is completed on 1st Jan 26. Immediate before 31st March is 31st March 25. How it can be 31st March 26? Priyanshi, beta, please read again what you have written. Construction completed on 1st Jan 26. What is the immediate previous 31st March? Immediate 31st March before that, before completion of construction. You are taking the closest 31st March. We don't want the closest 31st March. We want the 31st March preceding. Correct? Tanu beta, I hope it is clear. Priyanshi beta, I hope it is clear. Yes, Priyanshi. Good. So it is preceding. You all are not reading the word preceding. Okay? Now once this is done, we can easily find out 1/5. How much is 1/5 of 2240? I think somebody has already put 1/5 of this. It is 448. So 448, 448, 448, 448, 448 dash. Total for first 5 years, all years. Now the total is 926. And for the last year, it is 160. 928 or 926? 928, sorry, my bad. It is 928 and 160. Correct? Understood? आगे बढ़े. Third case scenario. This will again answer many people's question. Now my construction is completed on 1st December 30. So if it is getting completed on 1st December 30, चलो मैं इसको थोड़ा चेंज करता हूँ, थोड़ा सा change. Let us say I will make it 1st December 28. चलो थोड़ा चेंज करके करते हैं. 1st December 28. Tell me, from which year should I start? Chalo, tell me the year. If it is 1st December 28. Yes, very good. Anubhav, Priya, Soumya, Ishan, Pinari, Smriti, Priyanshi, no Deepika, no Anandruti, no Harshada. I don't know which date you all are telling me. I'm asking the year from which the deduction starts. No Pragya. Yes, Almas, Rehana, Ritika. No Rajveer. Shailja, I don't want date. I want the year. See, Dhanush, they can give any date. It is my duty as a teacher to give you all possible case scenarios. So I have taken even 32. So now my starting year is 20, 20. Which year? 28, 29. Correct, na? Yes, Ananya, Divya, correct. 28, 29 is the year of deduction. So I'll just write it again above. So now my starting year is 28, 29. 29, 30, 31. Now, interestingly, loan will be repaid here. But as I was mentioning at the start, I have to consider minimum 5 years. Why? Because my pre-construction deduction goes for 5 years. So 28, 29 will be the starting year. Here, my current year interest is getting over, but still I'll continue 2 more years because I will get preliminary or the pre-construction deduction for 5 years complete. बेटा 1st December 28 का फाइनेंशियल ईयर क्या होगा प्रज्ञा? अब बताओ, December 28 कौन सा फाइनेंशियल ईयर आएगा प्रज्ञा? आज शायद आपकी पढ़ाई बहुत ज्यादा हो गई है, आपका मन थक चुका है, आपका दिमाग ओवरबर्डन है प्रज्ञा. सो टेक अ ब्रेक, हैव अ किट कैट. करेक्ट? सो current year interest 480, 480 dash dash. Now, the interesting calculation. This date will become 31st March 28. 31st March 28. This will now be 7 years, 8 months. 7 year, 8 months. How much is now total pre-construction? प्रज्ञा आ गया बाहर? प्रिया इज आस्किंग सर हाउ 418 28 29 बेटा हर साल का इंटरेस्ट 480 है ना? हर साल का इंटरेस्ट प्रिया 480 है. सो प्रिया इट इज कंप्लीटेड ऑन 31st December. व्हाट इज कंप्लीटेड ऑन 31st December बेटा? हम उस पूरे साल का इंटरेस्ट ले रहे हैं. 36 80 736. So total is 36 80 and 1/5 is students are saying 736. प्रिया बट 1 दिसंबर को होने से कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. हमारे लिए तो पूरा साल का ही इंटरेस्ट लेना है. ये हम फर्स्ट सम से करते आ रहे हैं. फर्स्ट सम से लेके अब तक जितने भी सम्स हुए सब में आपका कंप्लीशन डेट बीच में कोई तो डेट था, मगर आपने पूरे साल का 480 ही लिया ना. अब अचानक अभी आके वो डाउट कैसे आ गया आपको कि वो 480 नहीं होना चाहिए था? करेक्ट. अंडरस्टूड ऑल. नो प्रॉब्लम प्रिया. कंफ्यूजन इज पार्ट एंड पार्सल. आप जो पढ़ रहे हो वो इस सदी की सबसे विकट सब्जेक्ट की सबसे विकट प्रोविजन है. दिस इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट ट्रिकीएस्ट प्रोविजन इन योर एंटायर इनकम टैक्स. सो डोंट वरी अगर एक बार में नहीं समझता है तो. पर इसे हमें थोड़ा सा मैनेज करना है बाय प्रैक्टिस, बाय रीडिंग इट अगेन. आई एम नॉट एक्सपेक्टिंग आपको एक बार में समझे. वापस पढ़िए. टेक आउट टाइम. विथ प्रैक्टिस, विथ रेपिटेशन, जो विकट है वो निकट हो जाएगा. ठीक है. ग्रेट. स्टूडेंट्स, I give you 2 minutes. Give the working for the next scenario, that is D. Do the working for D. क्या जीरो हो गया क्या? अनुभव, व्हाट इज जीरो? क्या जीरो होगा? आपने इंटरेस्ट भरा है कि नहीं भरा है 10 साल का? भरा है ना, तो डिडक्शन तो लेना पड़ेगा ना, जीरो कैसे होगा? हाँ, आप ये बोल सकते हो करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट जीरो है, आई अग्री. सो देर इज नो करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट. करेक्ट किनारी, नो करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट. यस प्रिया, यू राइट. सो अनुभव, इफ यू आर आस्किंग जीरो फॉर करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट, आई अग्री. किनारी, डोंट से इंटरेस्ट बिगिंस फ्रॉम 1 अप्रैल 30. यू कैन से डिडक्शन कौन से ईयर से स्टार्ट होगा वो आप बोलो, क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट तो आपका स्टार्ट हो रहा है 1 अगस्त 2020 से, जब से लोन लिया है. ओके. सो our rule, deduction will start from which year? Deduction starts from the year when the HP is complete. जब तक HP नहीं है तब तक आप उसका डिडक्शन कैसे लोगे? नो सोर्स, नो कंप्यूटेशन, नो डिडक्शन. नाउ माय HP is getting completed in the financial year 32-33. So I'm writing here. ये किसी ने एक मेरे को क्वेश्चन पूछा था कि सर व्हाट इफ आपका लोन रिपेमेंट पहले ही हो गया और कंप्लीशन बाद में हो. दिस इज दैट केस. अब मेरा लोन रिपेमेंट ऑलरेडी हो चुका है यहाँ पे 2030 में. सो मुझे कोई भी करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट आ रहा है क्या? नहीं. बट स्टिल आई हैव टू टेक 5 years, क्योंकि 5 साल तक मुझे डिडक्शन मिलेगा फॉर प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन इंटरेस्ट. बट देर इज नो करंट ईयर इंटरेस्ट बिकॉज द लोन इज ऑलरेडी रिपेड. नाउ comes this working again of pre-construction. Now pre-construction में ये डेट 1 अगस्त 30 है ही. अब ये डेट क्या आ जाएगा? 31 मार्च 32. Now this date is the earlier date. So for the first time, my pre-construction period is coming from 1 August 20 to 1 August 30. That is that entire 10 year. जितना मैंने इंटरेस्ट पे किया है, that entire 10 years is my pre-construction period. So for 10 years, the interest is 4800. So entire 10 years जितने पीरियड का मैंने इंटरेस्ट पे किया है is my pre-construction interest, and 1/5 of this is what I am getting as deduction for 5 years. नहीं बेटा, डोंट बी सो टेक्निकल. 10 years 1 day होगा क्या? इट इज 10 years. वो एकदम 1 अगस्त को उतना लिटरली रीड मत करो. इट इज 10 years. अनुभव, why again you are saying total eligible interest for deduction is zero? बेटा, टोटल एलिजिबल इंटरेस्ट आएगा ना जो 1/5 प्री कंस्ट्रक्शन का आ रहा है. आई एम नॉट एग्जैक्टली गेटिंग वेर यू आर गोइंग. अनुभव, इधर 1/5 आएगा कि नहीं आएगा मेरे को बताओ. इधर आ रहा है ना 1/5, 960, 960, 960. करेक्ट ना? So that is what is also your total. So how it will be zero, Anubhav? So students, is this clear? The entire interest working. नो किनारी बेटा, आपका डिडक्शन रिपेमेंट वाले ईयर से कैसे शुरू होगा? सिर्फ डिडक्शन किस साल शुरू होगा? जिस साल आपके पास सोर्स आएगा. सोर्स मतलब एचपी आएगा. आपने रिपेमेंट शुरू कर दिया 2020 से, पर तब आपके पास एचपी नहीं है. जब तक एचपी नहीं है, आप डिडक्शन लोगे किस में से? सी, अंडरस्टैंड दिस. बिजनेस ही स्टार्ट नहीं हुआ तो पीएनएल कैसे बनेगा? दैट इज व्हाई इन पीजीबीपी और इन योर अकाउंट्स यू हैव द प्रिलिमिनरी कॉन्सेप्ट. आई होप किनारी आई हैव आंसर्ड योर क्वेश्चन. Good. So here we have completed the second working also. And now what is left is only format working in different case scenarios. But before going to that, let us have a 5 minutes break. So we are taking a 5 minutes break, and after this, we'll go to the different case scenarios. Okay. So students, if this is absorbed, let us go to this. Now, what is this? This is your different case scenario that is possible under HP. What are these different case scenarios? Now, these different case scenarios are, first, either your property is self-occupied or either your property is let out. Now, within self-occupied, there are two possibilities that you have up to two self-occupied HPs or you have more than two self-occupied HPs. Now, why it is two and more than two? Because there is something relating to two self-occupied HPs, right? And then within let out, you may have any number of let out properties, whether 1, 2, 4, 10. The working doesn't change. Then you have some special case scenarios which people were asking me on the first day. First special case scenario is that your property is self-occupied for part year. Let us say first 4 months you are staying in that property. Then you shifted to bigger premises. So for remaining 8 months, you have let out that property. So it is self-occupied for part year and let out for the remaining part year. Next, your property is let out, but it remained vacant for the whole year because you could not get any tenant. Next, your property is part let out, part self-occupied. So part property is let out, part is self-occupied. Best example is paying guest. So see, understand this. These are the different case scenarios dealing with the property. So I'll just show you if I have to put it graphically. So broadly, your property may be self-occupied or let out. Within self-occupied, if it is for own business, it is outside your HP, it will go to PGBP. If it is for residence, then there are two possibilities, either one or two, that is up to two HPs self-occupied, more than two HPs self-occupied. Let out may be for residence or for business, it makes no difference. Any purpose you have let out, what the other person is doing in your property which is let out is none of your business. They may be residing it or they may be running their business. For you, the treatment is same. Now in this first 1, 2, 3, 4, any number of HPs are let out. Further, let out HP is vacant for whole year. Then part year self-occupied, part year let out. This is what I gave example. First 4 months you are staying in that HP. Thereafter you shifted to another HP. So this was let out. And then part HP self-occupied, part HP let out. So let us say you have a 4 BHK flat in which 2 rooms you are keeping for yourself, 2 rooms you are giving on PG. So part HP, 2 rooms self-occupied, remaining 2 rooms let out. Last possibility is composite letting, separable, inseparable. Inseparable, again it will go to PGBP, other sources as the case may be. Separable, then you will separate rent of HP and you will HP separate the rent for the assets. Rent for assets will go to other sources. Rent for HP will be treated in the same fashion as let out HP, whatever may be the case scenario. So students, see, this is the total possible usage of your house property. So HP Self-occupied for your own business, go into the PGP head. For your own residence, either 1 or 2 HP is self-occupied, the tax treatment is different. More than 2 HPs are self-occupied, tax treatment is different. If the HP is let out, you may let it out for stay, that is for residence, or you may let it out for business. What the other person does is none of your lookout. For you, it is a let out property. First scenario, one property is let out, 2, 3, 4, any number of properties are let out. The treatment is same. Then another case scenario, it is let out, but it remained vacant for the whole year as you did not get a tenant. Then some part of the year it was self-occupied, remaining part of the year it was let out. Then some part of the HP is self-occupied, some part is let out, that is paying guest. And last is composite letting. So students, these are the different case scenarios for which now we will see how HP computation happens. We already know how to calculate JV. We already know how to find out the eligible amount of interest. But now in different case scenarios, you will get to know what will be the actual workings considering the limits and everything. So, yes. Now see, I come back to the interest part, which we were discussing, and I had skipped this point of limit. But now we come back to limit. Now to understand limit, you have to first understand, as I just said, your property may be self-occupied or it may be let out. If the property is let out, or further we are going to see a concept of deemed let out, whatever it is. So if your property is let out or your property is deemed to be let out, in both cases, the treatment is same. What is the treatment? There is no limit on deduction. So whatever is the interest which we calculated now in all those examples A, B, C, D, whatever is the amount of interest, whether it is 2 lakhs, 5 lakhs, 7 lakhs, 18 lakhs, 20 lakhs, whatever is the amount of interest, entire interest you can take deduction in the format because there is no limit. But if your property is self-occupied, then there is some limit. Now, first scenario is your property self-occupied. Now within self-occupied, again, there is two possibility, whether you are opting for the new scheme or you are opting for the old scheme. If you are opting for the new scheme, there is no deduction for self-occupied property interest at all. So where you are going for the new regime, there is no deduction at all for self-occupied property interest. Default regime means the new regime. So you have to also check what is the regime under which you are computing tax. New regime, no deduction for self-occupied. But you are not going for new regime. You want to go for the old regime. See, default regime is the new regime. Please be clear. If you want to go for the old regime, not the new regime, then what it says? It says, if you satisfy all the conditions which we are going to study, then the maximum limit of deduction that you can take for interest for self-occupied property will be 2 lakhs up to 2 self-occupied properties. So you may have one self-occupied, you may have 2 self-occupied, but the maximum amount will be 2 lakhs for both properties combined. It is not 2 lakhs per HP. Remember this, 2 lakhs is not per HP. So if you are having 2 self-occupied HPs, I will give you 2 lakhs, which will be total for both self-occupied HPs combined. I hope you are getting this point. There is no problem. There is no confusion up to this stage. So I repeat, we are now talking about the limit of deduction for interest. Interest we have calculated. Whatever is this amount of interest, now you compare it with the limit. Now for limit, you have to first check whether your property is self-occupied or your property is let out. If your property is let out or deemed to be let out, don't worry, you get deduction of the entire amount of interest. And here, whether you are following old regime, new regime, that will also make no difference. You will get deduction always. Second, if your property is self-occupied, then you have to see whether you are in old regime or new regime. If you are in the new regime, which is also called as the default regime, then for self-occupied property under the default regime, that is the new regime, there is no deduction at all. But if you want to convert into old regime, then there is a deduction. How much is this deduction? The deduction is up to a maximum limit of rupees 2 lakhs, but this 2 lakhs limit will apply if all conditions are satisfied. Now let me tell you what will happen if you do not satisfy any one of these conditions, then the same limit will be 30,000. So for self-occupied property under the old regime, there are two limits. You satisfy all conditions, the limit is 2 lakhs. Not satisfying any one condition, the limit is 30,000 only. And this 2 lakhs or 30,000 is for both the HPs combined or for up to 2 self-occupied HPs. So if you have one self-occupied HP, the limit is 2 lakhs. You have two self-occupied HPs, together add both properties interest, still the limit is 2 lakhs. So you cannot exceed 2 lakhs. That is what is the condition. And if any of the condition which we are going to discuss now is not satisfied, then the limit is not even 2 lakhs. It will be 30,000 for both the self-occupied properties combined. What are these limit conditions for getting the limit of 2 lakhs? You have taken loan either for constructing the property or purchasing. So only for these two reasons, if loan is taken, the limit is 2 lakhs. If the loan is taken for repair, renewal, renovation, or some type of alterations, then the maximum limit will be 30,000. Second, the loan is taken after 1st April 99. Third, where you are doing construction, the construction should get completed within 5 years. From which year? From the end of the year in which loan is taken. So you leave the loan taken year. After that, within 5 years, your construction should be completed. Now, when all these conditions are satisfied, the limit is 2 lakhs. If not, the limit is 30,000. Is this clear? Students. Clear? Pradnya, I hope your doubt is now clear because you had some doubt earlier. So I repeat, just because it may be slightly confusing. First, check whether your property is self-occupied or let out. If it is let out, deemed let out, don't worry. Everything in interest is eligible, whether old scheme, whether new scheme, no limit, no problem with schemes. If your property is self-occupied, then first check the scheme. Scheme is new scheme, no deduction. Scheme is old scheme, deduction, but subject to a limit. Limit is how much? Limit is 2 lakhs if all conditions satisfied. If one of the condition, any condition not satisfied, limit is 30,000. But what is important, this limit of 2 lakhs or 30,000 applies for any two self-occupied properties. So if you have one, still the limit is that amount only. If you have two, then for both properties combined also, the limit will be 2 lakhs or 30,000. Now, when this limit of 2 lakhs will apply, you have taken loan for construction or purchase, not for repair or renewal or renovation. If loan is taken for renovation, then the limit will be 30,000. If the loan is taken for repairs, limit will be 30,000. Now, Kinnari Beta, please remember the limits which I am talking about is only for self-occupied under old regime. If your property is let out, even if the loan is taken for repair, renovation, there is no limit. Please go step by step, whether self-occupied or let out. If it is let out, don't see anything. It is allowed without any limit. Only when it is self-occupied. Then you go to each point, then first old scheme, new scheme. New scheme, no deduction. Old scheme, deduction with condition of limit. Tanu beta, you are saying if my HP is let out, we don't need to calculate pre-construction. Why beta? If you are not calculating pre-construction, how will you know that in every year how much amount of interest is eligible? Because every year the interest eligible would be the current year plus 1/5 of pre-construction. Without knowing the pre-construction, how can you find out the amount of deduction every year? So beta, whether the property is let out or self-occupied, you have to do the calculation. That is why I did not explain this limit point first. I first explain you entire computation and I said, first you do computation, then you go for all these limits and conditions. So first do computation, current year plus 1/5 pre-construction. Get the amount. Now check whether property self-occupied, entire amount, आंख बंद करके deduction. कुछ मत देखो, old scheme, new scheme, repairs, purchase, कुछ मत देखो, let out है ना, पूरा deduction. वो प्रॉपर्टी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड है, अब आपको मैं डिडक्शन दूंगा बट विथ सम कंडीशंस एंड लिमिट्स. Ritika beta, one property 2 lakhs, two properties also 2 lakhs, not 2 lakhs into two property 4 lakhs. It is not 2 lakhs is not per HP, 2 lakhs is per assessee. So understand it like this, for you the limit is 2 lakhs. Understood? So even if you have one property, limit is 2 lakhs. If you have two properties, limit is 2 lakhs. Because limit is per assessee, not per property. Right? Great. Now, what are the conditions for getting the higher limit of 2 lakhs? First, आपने लोन लिया होना चाहिए सिर्फ कंस्ट्रक्शन या परचेज के लिए. सेकंड, लोन होना चाहिए 1 अप्रैल 99 के बाद. थर्ड कंडीशन इज, आपने अगर कंस्ट्रक्शन के लिए लोन लिया है तो कंस्ट्रक्शन 5 साल में कंप्लीट होना चाहिए, बट ये 5 साल काउंट होंगे कब से? एंड ऑफ द प्रीवियस ईयर इन विच लोन इज टेकन. थोड़ा बच्चों अब अपना दिमाग लगाओ, थोड़ा सा लैंग्वेज इंटरप्रिटेशन को करने की कोशिश करो, क्योंकि नाउ यू हैव टू लर्न टू इंटरप्रिट द लॉ. अब अगर इधर लिखा है विद इन 5 years फ्रॉम द एंड ऑफ द प्रीवियस ईयर इन विच लोन इज टेकन, तो वो कैसे होगा? एग्जाम्पल बनाओ खुद का. लेट अस से आपने लोन कब लिया है? आपने लोन लिया है 1 अगस्त 2020. सेम मेरा वाला एग्जाम्पल. You have taken loan on 1st August 2020. आपका कंस्ट्रक्शन कंप्लीट हो जाना चाहिए 5 साल में. कब से? फ्रॉम द एंड ऑफ द प्रीवियस ईयर इन विच लोन इज टेकन. लोन टेकन वाला प्रीवियस ईयर कौन सा है? ये है. ये प्रीवियस ईयर खत्म होने के बाद 5 साल तक आपका कंस्ट्रक्शन हो जाना चाहिए. यानी आपका कंस्ट्रक्शन हो जाना चाहिए 31 March 2026 तक. Please, students, it is a humble request. Try to now decode. आप अपना दिमाग चलाओ प्लीज. I have no problem explaining 10 times. My pain is, आज मैं इधर बैठा हूं आपके हर क्वेश्चन को आंसर करने के लिए, पर एज अ सी आप इंडस्ट्री में जाओगे या इंटरव्यू में बैठोगे, कौन आपके आंसर करेगा? अदर दे विल बी आस्किंग यू क्वेश्चंस. थोड़ा सा अपना यूज करो. लैंग्वेज इज नॉट दैट डिफिकल्ट. I want you to prepare for understanding and interpreting these languages yourself. पर वो तभी होगा जब आप अपना दिमाग यूज करोगे. Please do that. Don't be dependent, because if you are dependent today, you will be dependent always. So please, even when you are attending any class, I know unfortunately many classes want you to be dependent on them, But that is beta not the right way of studying, because dependent today, dependent always. आज आपका पढ़ाई का अप्रोच वो होना चाहिए जो मैंने फर्स्ट लेक्चर में बताया था, यू ऑल रिमेम्बर। आप खुद से पढ़ के आओ और आप समझो, और जो आपने समझा है वो कंफर्म करो। डोंट सिट आइडल कि चलो सर ही बताएंगे तो ही समझ में आएगा। ऊपर का प्रोसेसिंग चालू रखो। सौम्या बेटा, इफ द लोन इज टेकन फॉर बोथ कंस्ट्रक्शन एंड रिपेयर्स, व्हाट विल बी द टाइम लिमिट? प्रैक्टिकली ऐसा कभी नहीं होता है, क्योंकि आपको लोन लेते वक्त कंडीशंस वहीं पे बतानी पड़ती है। पर समझो, मैं आपका एग्जांपल मान लेता हूं, इन दैट केस यू विल गेट द लोअर लिमिट ओनली, क्योंकि हायर लिमिट के लिए द कंडीशन इज लोन शुड बी ओनली for construction or purchase. If your loan is for construction and repairs both, let us say what you are asking, but in that case, it will be only 30,000, the limit, not 2 lakhs. So Priyanshi, I'm not getting your point. So what you are saying is, I think what I'm also saying. You are saying, sir, 30,000 is given for repairs and renewal. So I'm also saying that where the loan is taken for construction and purchase only, it will be 2 lakhs. Otherwise, it will be 30,000. So what differentiation, Priyanshi, you are trying to make out? I'm not able to understand, beta. So these are the conditions. All conditions satisfied, the limit is 2 lakhs. And then for any other category, that is where the loan is, where the property is self-occupied or deemed to be let out, there is no limit. No need to see anything else. Old scheme, new scheme, loan for repairs, loan for purchase, don't see anything. If your property is let out, full interest is deduction. I hope this point is now clear. And then we discuss this. We, in fact, solve this. What is pre-construction period? It starts from the date of loan taken up to the date of repayment, or date of loan taken up to 31st March, immediately preceding the year of construction completion, whichever is earlier. यही हमने अभी प्रैक्टिकली सॉल्व किया। अब आपको ये बहुत इजीली समझेगा, बिकॉज यू हैव द प्रैक्टिकल सम्स इन फ्रंट ऑफ योर आइज। पॉइंट्स टू बी नोटेड: interest is to be calculated for the pre-construction period as above. 1/5 of this interest for pre-construction period will be allowed over a span of 5 years. फर्स्ट इंस्टॉलमेंट कब से शुरू होगा? जिस साल प्रॉपर्टी का कंस्ट्रक्शन कंप्लीट हुआ है, या जिस साल प्रॉपर्टी आपको मिली। लॉजिकल है, जब तक एचपी नहीं है, नो एचपी, नो कंप्यूटेशन, नो डिडक्शन. सो डिडक्शन विल स्टार्ट ओनली फ्रॉम द ईयर इन विच योर कंस्ट्रक्शन इज कंप्लीटेड एंड यू रिसीव द प्रॉपर्टी. सम अदर पॉइंट्स: इंटरेस्ट ऑन लोन on fresh loan taken to repay existing loan is also allowed as deduction. काफी बार क्या होता है, एक जगह पे लोन चल रहा है, अब मुझे वो स्वैप करना है दूसरे बैंक के लोन से. सो माई प्रेजेंट लोन इज विद HDFC, आई वांट टू स्वैप इट विद SBI. सो मैं क्या करता हूँ, SBI से फ्रेश लोन लेके HDFC का लोन रिपे कर देता हूँ. नाउ आई हैव SBI लोन. Interest what I am paying for SBI loan is eligible. Most important, if you are paying interest outside India, क्योंकि आपने लोन इंडिया के बाहर से लिया, while paying such interest, you should deduct TDS. If you have not deducted TDS, you will not get deduction. So wherever you are making payment of interest outside India, there is a condition: deduct TDS, then only you get the deduction. Third point is, you have purchased the house where you have agreed with the builder only that you will make payment in installment. So आप बैंक के पास लोन लेने नहीं गए, आपने बिल्डर को रिक्वेस्ट किया कि सर आप एक काम करो, आप मुझे 5 साल का 10 साल का इसका इंस्टॉलमेंट बना के दे दो, आई विल पे यू द एंटायर प्राइस ऑफ द फ्लैट बट इन इंस्टॉलमेंट्स. अब बिल्डर बोलता है ठीक है, पर इफ आई एम गिविंग यू इंस्टॉलमेंट्स, देन आई विल ऑल्सो चार्ज सम इंटरेस्ट. नाउ इन दिस केस द पॉइंट इज, you are paying interest to the builder because you have agreed for installment scheme with the builder. In such cases, the provision says whatever is the interest which you are paying to the builder for the balance price, क्योंकि जब आप इंस्टॉलमेंट में ले रहे हो, there is some amount which is always outstanding, क्योंकि आपका इंस्टॉलमेंट उतना अभी तक ड्यू नहीं हुआ है. So whatever is the interest on this outstanding amount, you are eligible for deduction. In short, there is no compulsion here कि आपका बैंक के पास ही लोन होना चाहिए. अगर बिल्डर के पास से भी आपने लोन जैसा अरेंजमेंट कर दिया, जिसे हम इंस्टॉलमेंट बोलते हैं, still the interest payable to the builder or the outstanding amount is also covered under this section for deduction. So these are the provisions relating to interest, जिसका हमने पहले प्रैक्टिकल वर्किंग किया, ये जो अभी अपन ने किया, और वही उसका थियोरेटिकल पार्ट था. नाउ वी कम टू द कंक्लूडिंग पार्ट कि ये जितने भी केस सिनारियोज हैं ऑफ एचपी हेड जिसकी हमने बात की, इसका वर्किंग कैसे होना है. करेक्ट. सो नाउ लेट अस सी द वर्किंग. Now, what are the different case scenarios? As you can see on the screen, यहाँ तक पहले दो case scenarios में your property is self-occupied. In all other case scenario, your property is either let out or let out plus self-occupied. Now, remember one thing, students. The law says we will consider a property as self-occupied when it is solely self-occupied. अगर वो प्रॉपर्टी में पार्ट सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड पार्ट लेट आउट है तो फिर उसका आंसर चेंज हो जाएगा. तो यहाँ पे अभी जो हम पढ़ रहे हैं, जहां पे हम बोल रहे हैं प्रॉपर्टी इज सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड, इट मींस आपका जो घर है वो पूरी तरह से सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड है. सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड मींस आपने अपने पास रखा है. नाउ व्हाट इज द स्पेशल पॉइंट व्हेन द प्रॉपर्टी इज सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड? द स्पेशल पॉइंट इज दिस, एंड दिस इज व्हाट इज कवर्ड इन 23 सबसेक्शन 2. हमने जो जीएवी का वर्किंग पढ़ा था स्टूडेंट्स, दैट वाज 23 सबसेक्शन 1, क्लॉज ए, क्लॉज बी, क्लॉज सी, जो बाद में हमने एक्ट में भी देखा. However, for this particular thing, that is self-occupied property, the section is 23 subsection 2 for GAV, and it says the GAV of self-occupied property will be taken as nil. Now comes the most important point. आपके पास बहुत सारे सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टीज हो सकते हैं बिकॉज यू मे हैव मल्टीपल फ्लैट्स जो आप यूज कर रहे हो खुद के लिए, आपके पेरेंट्स रह रहे हैं, आपके भाई बहन रह रहे हैं, या आपने वो बंद रखा है, मीन्स यू आर नॉट गिविंग इट ऑन रेंट. सी, आप जिस प्रॉपर्टी को रेंट पे नहीं दे रहे हो, आप अपने पास रख रहे हो, दैट इज ऑल्सो सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड. नाउ पे अटेंशन. आपके पास कितने भी प्रॉपर्टी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड हो सकते हैं, बट दिस बेनिफिट that GAV will be nil is allowed up to maximum 2 self-occupied properties only. And this is what is given in section 23 subsection 2 clause A, clause B. So the benefit of nil GAV, यानी कि हम आपको टैक्स नहीं लगाएंगे, this is applicable for 2 self-occupied properties. Now somebody will ask, sir, what will happen if I have 3 self-occupied properties? तो उसके लिए हम इस टेबल में आते हैं where more than 2 properties are self-occupied. तो उसका आंसर है 2 HPs के लिए हम सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड मान के जीएवी को निल मानेंगे. बट जो तीसरा प्रॉपर्टी है जो कि सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड है, हम उसे सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड नहीं मानेंगे. तो लॉ ने उसको एक नया नाम दिया है कि वो सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड है, मतलब आपने रेंट पे दिया नहीं है, मगर लॉ आपको उसका सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड का निल वाला बेनिफिट नहीं देगा, क्योंकि निल वाला जो बेनिफिट देना है दैट इज ओनली अलाउड फॉर 2 सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड. अगर 2 से ज्यादा सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड है तो 2 को आप निल ट्रीट करो, यानी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड ही ट्रीट करो. पर जो तीसरा है, लॉ सेज ट्रीटेड एज डीम्ड टू बी लेट आउट. डीम टू बी लेट आउट मतलब उसका जीएवी निल नहीं आएगा, उसका जीएवी आएगा आपका एक्सपेक्टेड रेंट. सी, एक्चुअल रेंट तो है नहीं. एक्चुअल रेंट इसलिए नहीं है बिकॉज ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड, तो एक्चुअल रेंट तो होना नहीं है, बट मैं उसे डीम्ड टू बी लेट आउट ट्रीट करूंगा, विच मीन्स आई विल बी चार्जिंग टैक्स बाय टेकिंग some GAV of that property. And what is this GAV? That GAV will be the ER, that is the expected rent. So understand this, up to 2 self-occupied properties GAV is nil. अगर आपके पास 2 से ज्यादा सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टीज है तो 2 प्रॉपर्टीज को आप अभी भी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड का ट्रीटमेंट करो, यानी 2 प्रॉपर्टीज को आपका ट्रीटमेंट ये कॉलम जैसा रहे, दैट इज GAV nil, म्युनिसिपल टैक्स नील. अब जेवी और म्युनिसिपल टैक्स नील है तो एनएवी नील, स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन नील, और इंटरेस्ट का डिडक्शन आप लो सब्जेक्ट टू मैक्सिमम लिमिट. फिर वो 2 लाख आएगा, 30,000 आएगा, ये सब हमने पिछले स्लाइड में देख लिया. कि सबसे पहले आप चेक करोगे वेदर इट इज ओल्ड स्कीम न्यू स्कीम, एंड वेर इट इज ओल्ड स्कीम and all four conditions are satisfied, you will take 2 lakhs. But if it is old scheme and any one of the condition is not satisfied, you will take 30,000. Where it is new scheme, तो यहाँ पे आप कुछ नहीं लोगे, you will take nil. So all this is applicable where the property is self-occupied. और कितने self-occupied property के लिए ये working applicable है nil वाला? Up to 2. If it is more than 2, then for the two self-occupied property, again the working remains same. What? GAV nil, म्युनिसिपल टैक्स भरा है तो भी नील, एनएवी नील, एनएवी नील है तो स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन नील, और इंटरेस्ट कितना आएगा वापस सेम सेम, मतलब पहले चेक करो ओल्ड स्कीम न्यू स्कीम, न्यू स्कीम है तो नील, ओल्ड स्कीम है तो अप टू मैक्सिमम लिमिट विच इज ईदर 2 lakhs और 30,000 आप इंटरेस्ट ले सकते हो। दो से ज्यादा जो सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टीज होंगे, अब हम उनको सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड नहीं बोलेंगे, नाउ वी विल कॉल देम एज डीम टू बी लेट आउट। And the moment they are deemed to be let out, you will have GAV, which is ER. अब म्युनिसिपल टैक्स आएगा, which is the amount paid. तो अब NAV भी आएगा, दोनों का डिफरेंस। NAV आया तो उसका 30% आएगा, which is स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन। और अब आपको इंटरेस्ट लेना है पूरा, जितना आपने पिछले वर्किंग में कैलकुलेट किया। इट कैन बी एनी अमाउंट, 2 लाख, 5 लाख, 10 लाख, आपको पूरे इंटरेस्ट का डिडक्शन। बिकॉज द प्रॉपर्टी इज नाउ नॉट ट्रीटेड एज सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड। सो अंडरस्टैंड स्टूडेंट्स, अभी जो हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं ये थोड़ा थियोरटिकल ही है। थियोरटिकल मींस आपको ये समझना है कि लॉ ने किधर क्या फिगर लेने को बोला है, इसका कैलकुलेशन कैसे करना वो हम ऑलरेडी कर चुके हैं, जीएबी का कैलकुलेशन हम कर चुके हैं, इंटरेस्ट फाइंड आउट करने का कर चुके हैं, पर अब कहाँ पे क्या लेना है, दैट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द नेचर ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी। नाउ देयर इज अ वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन बाय प्रियांशी कि सर आपने ये जो एग्जांपल दिया कि आपके 3 प्रॉपर्टी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड है, जिसमें 2 को ही सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड ट्रीट करेंगे और एक तो डीम टू बी लेट आउट होगा। सो हम डिसाइड कैसे करेंगे कि कौन से 2 को सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड लेना है और किसको डीम टू बी लेट आउट लेना है? तो प्रियांशी लॉ ने इसके बारे में कोई आंसर नहीं दिया। अब यही मुझे आपको लास्ट कंक्लूडिंग पॉइंट इधर बताना था, विच यू हैव आस्क्ड एज अ क्वेश्चन। सो वेर आई हैव मोर देन 2 सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड प्रॉपर्टीज, द लॉ हैज सिंपली सेड कि आप 2 को ही सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड मानो, यानी ये नील 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 करो, और जो तीसरा है या 2 से ज्यादा जितने भी है, दे विल बी ट्रीटेड एज डीम टू बी लेट आउट। और डीम टू बी लेट आउट हुआ मतलब अब सारे कॉलम्स में वैल्यू आ जाएंगे, जीएवी इज ईआर, म्युनिसिपल टैक्स पेड माइनस हो जाएगा, सो यू विल गेट एनएवी, एनएवी आया तो 30% आएगा और इंटरेस्ट पूरा आएगा। नाउ द क्वेश्चन इज हाउ विल आई डिसाइड कि अगर मेरे पास 3 सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड है तो कौन से 2 को मुझे सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड की तरह ट्रीट करना है और किस एक को मुझे डीम टू बी लेट आउट की तरह ट्रीट करना है? द लॉ हैज नॉट गिवन आंसर टू दिस। नाउ देर इज अ लॉ that where a law is silent, especially a taxation law is silent. So the law is, general law is, you take the position which is most beneficial to taxpayer. This is an implied law. ये कहीं पे लिखा हुआ लॉ नहीं। तो वेयर अ टैक्सेशन लॉ इज साइलेंट, जैसे यहाँ पे वो साइलेंट है कि कैसे सिलेक्ट करे कौन से 2 सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड, देन द रूल इज आपने वो पोजीशन लेनी है विच इज मोस्ट बेनिफिशियल टू असेसी। नाउ यू विल से सर वो पोजीशन कैसे लेंगे? सो माय आंसर इज ट्रायल एंड एरर। कैसे ट्रायल एंड एरर? मैं पहला वर्किंग करूंगा ए बी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड, सी डीम टू बी लेट आउट। दूसरा वर्किंग करूंगा ए सी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड, बी डीम टू बी लेट आउट। तीसरा वर्किंग करूंगा बी सी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड, ए डीम टू बी लेट आउट। आई विल मेक 3 वर्किंग्स विद दिस कॉम्बिनेशन, और तीनों वर्किंग का आई फाइंड आउट टोटल। जिस वर्किंग में मुझे ये टोटल इनकम अगर पॉजिटिव है तो सबसे कम, और अगर लॉस है तो सबसे ज्यादा आएगा, दैट इज व्हाट इज आई विल सिलेक्ट। सो इट मे हैपन दैट आफ्टर वर्किंग आई विल फाइंड दिस ऑप्शन एज मोस्ट सुटेबल, क्योंकि इसमें या तो जो पॉजिटिव इनकम आ रहा है टोटल वो तीनों में से सबसे कम है, या अगर लॉस आ रहा है तो तीनों में से सबसे ज्यादा आ रहा है लॉस। I will select that option and accordingly I will do my final computation. I hope Priyanshi I answered your question. Yes, Dhanush, your answer, your point is correct. प्रियांशी, यू कैन नॉट से डायरेक्टली लीस्ट वैल्यू, यू विल हैव टू डू दिस कॉम्बिनेशन, क्योंकि हर प्रॉपर्टी का ईआर अलग है, हर प्रॉपर्टी में इंटरेस्ट अलग है, तो आपको वो चेक करना पड़ेगा कि किसका इंटरेस्ट और ये सब का जो कॉम्बिनेशन आता है वो आपके लिए बेस्ट बेनिफिशियल। नो राजवीर, ईआर ज्यादा है तो आप सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड लोगे, नॉट नेसेसरी, क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट भी तो रोल प्ले करेगा, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली इंटरेस्ट माइनस करने के बाद नेट आने वाला है। तो दैट इज वाई कभी भी डायरेक्टली आंसर अज्यूम मत करो। अगर वैसा रहता तो मैंने आपको ट्रायल एंड एरर बोला ही नहीं रहता, आई वुड हैव सेड कि डायरेक्टली जिसका ईआर ज्यादा है उसको आप सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड मानो, ऐसा नहीं है, क्योंकि बाद में माइनस करके इंटरेस्ट माइनस होने के बाद नेट अमाउंट आती है। करेक्ट? इज दिस फाइन विद ऑल? ग्रेट। नाउ वंस यू हैव अंडरस्टूड दिस, अब आगे वाला जो पॉइंट है वो इजी। यस बेटा।
So, I have one small doubt.
प्लीज
The let out for the part of the year, a portion which was let out for part of the year.
बेटा, मैं अभी तक
In
आया नहीं
that
ना वहां
case,
पे, मैं आया नहीं ना अभी तक वहां पे। आई हैव नॉट इट कम टू दैट केस बेटा। लेट मी फर्स्ट
okay, sir.
एक्सप्लेन, मे बी आपका आंसर डाउट सॉल्व हो जाएगा।
Okay, sir.
ठीक है ना? लेट मी आंसर दैट फर्स्ट। ओके, नाउ आई कम टू द सिनेरियो वेयर योर प्रॉपर्टी इज लेट आउट। अब उसमें इफ इट इज लेट आउट फॉर फुल ईयर, नथिंग स्पेशल, तो जीएवी आएगा नॉर्मली कैसे, ए आर कंपेयर्ड विथ ई आर विच एवर इज हायर, जो हमने सीखा फर्स्ट लेक्चर। म्युनिसिपल टैक्स एक्चुअली पेड माइनस हो जाएगा, यू गेट एनएवी, 30% ऑफ एनएवी विल बी योर स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन, एंड इंटरेस्ट अब नो लिमिट। ना लिमिट देखना है, ना न्यू स्कीम ओल्ड स्कीम देखना है, ना रिपेयर देखना है, कुछ नहीं, जितना भी इंटरेस्ट है पूरा इंटरेस्ट इज अलाउड एज डिडक्शन विदाउट एनी लिमिट। नाउ सम स्पेशल केस सिनारियो, सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड फॉर पार्ट ईयर and let out for remaining part year. So here I gave you example. Assume आप जिस घर में रह रहे हो, फर्स्ट 4 मंथ्स आप वहां पे रह रहे हो, सो इट इज सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड। फिर आप बड़े घर में शिफ्ट हो जाते हो, सो आपने इसको बचे हुए 8 मंथ्स लेट आउट कर दिया। So this is the practical example of this case, that part of the year it is self occupied, remaining part of the year it is let out. Now what does the law says? The law says क्योंकि ये लेट आउट तो है तो आपको जीएवी निकालना है, पर जीएवी निकालते वक्त यू विल टेक रेंट ऑफ द लेट आउट पीरियड ओनली। तो आपका जो एक्चुअल रेंट है वो 8 मंथ्स का ही आएगा, मगर ईआर आपको लेना है पूरे साल का। सो द सिंपल थिंग दैट दे हैव ट्राइड टू से इज टेक एआर ऑफ लेट आउट पीरियड, जो मेरे एग्जांपल में 8 मंथ्स है, कंपेयर इट विथ ईआर ऑफ 12 मंथ्स। और देयर इज अ वेरी गुड पॉसिबिलिटी कि ईआर ही हायर आएगा, और ये वैकेंसी का कोई चक्कर नहीं है यहाँ पे, ये 4 मंथ्स वैकेंसी नहीं है, 4 मंथ्स आप उस प्रॉपर्टी में रह रहे थे, सो इट कैन नॉट बी कॉल्ड एज वैकेंसी। सो अगर आपका ईआर बड़ा आता है तो ईआर इज जीएवी, नो प्रॉब्लम। सो व्हाट दे आर सेइंग इज व्हेन पार्ट ईयर इट इज सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड, पार्ट ईयर इट इज लेट आउट, उस केस में यू हैव टू कैलकुलेट जीएवी बाय टेकिंग एआर, दैट इज एक्चुअल रेंट ओनली फॉर द लेट आउट पीरियड, क्योंकि पहले 4 महीने तो आप रह रहे थे, तो उसका तो एक्चुअल रेंट आ ही नहीं सकता बिकॉज यू आर स्टेइंग देयर। So you will take actual rent only for the let out period, which in my example is 8 months, but you will compare it with ER, which is for whole year. And then whichever is higher will become your GAV. So that is the only special point here. So GAV के calculation के लिए they have mentioned this special point, right? उसके बाद म्युनिसिपल टैक्स एक्चुअली पेड माइनस होगा, एनईवी आएगा, 30% ऑफ एनईवी स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन होगा, और इंटरेस्ट वापस आएगा नो लिमिट, बिकॉज योर केस इज दैट द प्रॉपर्टी इज let out. Yes. ER would be mostly higher. Possible canary. So if ER is higher, you will take ER. Vanipreet, can there be a theoretical question in which we have to write all the conditions? See बेटा, होने को क्वेश्चन हो सकता है, मगर जनरली एग्जाम में वो लोग ऐसा क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछ रहे हैं, सो प्लीज डोंट वरी फॉर दैट। और बाकी तो एक चीज समझो ना, इवन फॉर प्रैक्टिकल सॉल्विंग यू विल हैव टू रिमेंबर दीज कंडीशंस। सो अगर आप कंडीशंस याद रख रहे हो तो थियरी में आया तो उसको आप लिख लेना अपनी लैंग्वेज में, राइट? प्रज्ञा सर, सो सो के लिए, क्या सो, अच्छा एसओ के लिए, सॉरी, एसओ के लिए जीएवी नील होता है, देन यहाँ पे कंपैरिजन करते टाइम कंपेयर होल ईयर के ईआर से क्यों करते हैं? सी बेटा, एसओ का जीएवी नील तभी होता है जब एसओ पूरे साल के लिए एसओ होता है। ये मैंने यहाँ पे बताया था आपको, इफ यू रिमेम्बर, कि हम प्रॉपर्टी को एसओ तभी ट्रीट करेंगे जब वो पूरे साल एसओ होगा। ये कंडीशन दिया है 23(2) में। अगर वो प्रॉपर्टी साल में एक महीने के लिए नहीं, एक दिन के लिए भी लेट आउट हो गया, हम उसे एसओ मानते हैं। सो ये जो 23(2) में जीएवी नील लेने की बात कही है बेटा, दैट इज एप्लीकेबल ओनली व्हेन द प्रॉपर्टी इज सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड फॉर होल ईयर। दैट इज द कंडीशन गिवन इन द लॉ। करेक्ट बेटा? इसीलिए यहाँ पे ये रूल आया कि सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड पार्ट ऑफ द ईयर भी है तो भी आप ईआर पूरे साल का लोगे, क्योंकि हम उसे अब सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड मानते ही नहीं, वी कंसिडर इट एज लेट आउट। सौम्या बेटा, आफ्टर ट्रायल एंड एरर आप उन प्रॉपर्टीज को सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड लेना जिन प्रॉपर्टीज का कॉम्बिनेशन करके आपको बेस्ट आंसर आ रहा है। मैंने इधर बताया ना, आपके पास पॉसिबिलिटी क्या है, ए बी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड, सी लेट आउट, ए सी सेल्फ ऑक्यूपाइड, बी लेट आउट। इनमें से जिधर आपका आंसर बेस्ट आएगा, बेस्ट मतलब क्या, जिधर आपको टैक्स सबसे कम आएगा, दैट इज योर आंसर बेटा। सौम्या, सौम्या बेटा, आई हैड ऑलरेडी एक्सप्लेन इन इंग्लिश, आई रिपीट फॉर यू। I have given you three combinations in trial and error: A, B, C, A, C, B, B, C, A. Now you have to compute your total income under these three options, and the option which is most beneficial you will select. Which option will be most beneficial as a taxpayer? For me, that option is most beneficial where I get the lowest tax. So in all the three options which I have given you have to find out where you will get the lowest tax. That is what you will select, Soumya. Is this fine? Ishan is asking, sir, if we have taken loan for three self-occupied property as a single loan, then how the loan be bifurcated? It is very simple, beta. Even if you have taken a single loan, you know the loan amount utilization for each HP because each HP has a different value. So when you are utilizing the loan, if the HPs are different, you will know ki how much loan is utilized for HPA, for B, for C. Interest will be bifurcated according to that, because whatever amount of loan is utilized in A, interest will come on that amount. That will be interest of A. Whatever loan amount is utilized for B, interest will come on that amount. That is interest for B. Fine, beta? Obviously, beta, Ishan, don't worry. ये बहुत hypothetical question है. Exam does not have such hypothetical question, but even if they give, this will be given. ठीक है? Anandruti is asking, sir, if house is LOP, LOP for 3 months. After that, it is SOP. Same condition. It is let out for part of the year and self-occupied for remaining part. Same working happens. So 3 months let out, 9 months self-occupied. Same working, what we just discussed. You will take AR for how many months? 3 months in your example, because 3 months is let out. Still, ER will be of 12 months. Compare whichever is higher is GAB. Correct, beta? Anandruti. Now, next case scenario. Your property was let out. Your property was let out, but it remained vacant. Now, where the property is let out, but it remained vacant for the whole year, again the law says take GAV as nil. Now, here, even though they are saying take municipal tax paid, but still NAV will be taken as nil. It cannot be negative. Once NAV is nil, standard deduction is nil. Now, interesting point is there is no limit on interest because your case is not self-occupied, it is let out. But why it is nil? Because it was vacant for the whole year. So where the property is let out, but it is remaining vacant for the whole year, in that particular case, GAV is nil. Principal tax you will ignore because NAV cannot be negative, so it will be nil. Standard deduction will be nil, and interest will be allowed completely without applying any limit. And then comes the last case scenario where part of your HP is self-occupied and remaining part is let out. Now, what is the example for this? I have already given. Let us say you have a 4 BHK flat. Out of 4 BHK, 3 rooms you are occupying. 1 room you have given to PG. This is the example of part of the HP is self-occupied and part of the HP is self-occupied and part is let out. So out of 4 rooms, 3 rooms you are keeping for yourself, 1 room you are letting out. Now the law says, assume that there are 2 HPs. So these 3 rooms will be treated as 1 HP. This 1 room will be treated as another HP. Now these 3 rooms will be considered as a self-occupied HP. And then the working of this first column will apply. That is, GAV will be nil, municipal tax nil, NAV nil, standard deduction nil, and interest will be what we studied. New scheme nil, old scheme, all conditions satisfied, 2 lakhs up to 2. And if one of the condition not satisfied, then 30,000. In short, where there is single HP, but part of it, that is few rooms are self-occupied and one of the rooms or 2 of the rooms is let out, the law says assume you have 2 HPs. Then this working done as if the HP is self-occupied, that is as per column 1. This working done as if the property is let out, that is column number 3. That is compute GAV by comparing ER and AR. Then municipal tax actually paid, NAV, standard deduction, and interest will be allowed no limit. Now, what is very important in this whole working is, since there is one single HP, your ER will be one single figure, your municipal tax will be one single figure, your interest will be one single figure. Now, these 3 values, which is a single value because HP is single, has to be apportioned between these 2 parts in the ratio in which the rooms are self-occupied and let out. So in our example, 3 rooms are self-occupied, 1 is let out. So in the ratio of 3:1, you will divide all these figures between the 2 categories. And then you will apply this working. I hope this is clear to you all. Yes, students, is this clear to you all? Great. So see, students, these are the different case scenarios. Now, there are some more special points. We'll discuss that so that this whole part will get completed. So what are these special points? First, your HP is in foreign country. It makes no difference. If it is taxable under the head HP, as per the provisions, you will apply all the above provisions that we studied. If you are running your own business in that property, we already studied it is part of PGBP. Now this is something new. If you are a builder and that property is your stock in trade. So if you're a builder, the property is your stock in trade. Now what they are saying, in such a case, it is covered under the head HP only. However, you are given a relaxation. That is, for the first 2 years after your property is constructed, for the first 2 years, we will not tax it. But after the first 2 years, we will start taxing it as if it is deemed to be let out. So what is this case? You are a builder. Now, as a builder, you have constructed a building with many flats, shops, etc. And these unsold flats and shops are your stock in trade, obviously. Now, in this particular case, when these flats and shops are your stock in trade, the first point that they have answered is, we will consider it under the head HP only. This is what is given in section 23 bracket 5. And within that, there is a relaxation that for first 2 years after the construction is completed, we will not tax it. We will not tax it for the first 2 years. Thereafter, it will be taxed if it is still lying with the builder. Next special point, composite letting, which is inseparable. We already discussed it will not be covered under HP. It will go to PGVP or other sources. Next point is there is a theoretical point that where your property is given on rent, but you could not recover the rent, that is, it has become bad debts. We already saw that this amount is deducted while computing AR, but there is a condition, or rather, there are conditions given under Rule 4 that when we will consider it as bad debt, that is when you can deduct it. Answer first, your tenancy is bona fide. The defaulting tenant has vacated, so he has left your property. Maybe he has run away without paying your rent, and you have taken all steps to remove him if he's still in your property. Most important, the defaulting tenant is not occupying your property anymore, and you have taken all reasonable steps for recovering the rent, but now you are sure that the rent will not be recoverable. So when all these conditions are satisfied, it proves that that rent has actually become bad debts. Since it has become bad debts, the law says you claim it as deduction. Fine. And then the last part of this chapter, section 25A, whatever you have shown as bad debts, if these bad debts are recovered in future, law says tax it in the year in which these bad debts are recovered. So whenever it is realized subsequently, you will tax it. When? You will tax it in the year of receipt, but it will be taxed after deducting 30%. So you will deduct 30% and then you will tax it. So this is a special provision under 25A, which is applicable to this unrealized rent, or if there was some arrears of rent. In both these cases, whenever this amount is received in the future, in that year, that is in the year of receipt or realization, you will tax this amount and you will tax it by allowing that standard deduction of 30%. The law has also clarified that you will tax this in the year of receipt, even though you may not be owner of that property anymore. So you may have sold that property, no problem. Still, you will tax it in the year in which it is received. Fine. And the last point is property owned by co-owners. What are co-owners? We also call it as joint properties or joint ownership properties. Like in case of a flat, husband wife have together purchased that flat. The name of both the persons is there on the document. So that is the example of co-ownership. Now, in case of co-ownership, let us say you are getting rent on this particular flat. What will be the tax treatment? So the law says under section 26, you first compute the HP income of this particular property, whatever it is, and then divide this HP income as per the shares of these co-owners. So what it is saying, you first compute the HP income as per whatever we studied in all these sections, and then this amount will be divided, whatever HP income or even loss, if there is a loss, that will be divided between the co-owners in the respective share of ownership. So if their share of ownership is 60-40, the income or loss, whatever you are getting, will be divided between the two in the ratio of 60-40. And then each one will be paying the tax on their share of income. And if it is loss, each one will be eligible for the set-off. So students, this is the complete house property chapter. Most important working was the starting GAV working and today's interest working. Once you have understood this, all these case scenarios, you have to simply fit in the workings as per what the law has provided, that what you have to take in GAV, whether you have to take full interest or you have to take interest up to some limit. That is only what you have to apply as per the different provisions under different case scenarios. Fine. Yes, Priyanshi. So more than one assessee, it is co-ownership. Ishan is asking, sir, if it is self-occupied in case of owners, then both allowed limit of 2 lakhs. Yes, beta. So each one will be allowed limit of 2 lakhs because I had said that 2 lakhs is per person. So if there are 2 persons, each one will get limit of 2 lakhs. You are right. So students, that was Once again, a very engaging session with you all, with all the doubts that you all have raised, with all the interactions that we had. Yes, Kinari Bida.
In the last thing, we discussed that if the assessee is recovering the unrealized rent later after certain span of time, say like 5 years, then the property is not in his ownership anymore. Will it be still under the head of house property?
Better, that was the last point of Section 25A.
Yes.
That even if you're
Yes.
not the owner of that property, because you may have sold the property by then, still for that recovery of interest, that interest will be covered under the head HP only. That is what is the special point they have clarified. Correct?
Okay. 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 Thank you, sir.
So thank you, students. That's it all for today from my side. Let us catch up soon. And till then, please keep studying. Fine. Thank you. Thank you all. Yes, sir.